Hey, look, man, these new generation of parents, bro, y'all gotta get y'all kids in check. The shit that these kids be doing and saying now, I would've got my ass whooped from my grandma and my mother a long time ago. These kids done got way too comfortable with disrespecting their parents. These little niggas don't give a fuck about crashing out. They don't care about going to jail. Then on top of that, they don't get discipline from their parents at home. I just literally seen the kid, bro, cuss out his mama outside. And this is the fucking problem. Y'all treat y'all kids like they y'all best friend. And then when you let your kid become your best friend, they go treat you like a best friend. What do best friends do? They talk to you any type of way they want to. They cuss you out. Like these new generation of parents, like their kids do anything.
I'm calling out all the parents. If you're a parent and your child is in pre-K to elementary school to high school, I'm calling you out. The children today, I have never experienced, and I'm 22. Having to teach and work with you guys as children has been the most traumatic experience of my life. They don't respect any authority. You ask them, can you stand in your designated spot? They're telling you no and shut up. You confront the parent. The parent tries to argue with you and fuss at you because you tried to reprimand and redirect their kid. What world do we live in? Like, what in you guys' brain as a parent says, my kid not following any directions is a great thing. It's not that serious, and y'all don't have a right to tell her what to do. It's sad. It's sad. It's really, really sad. And I'm so scared for these little girls today because this is the most insane agenda push I have ever seen.
Hey everyone, it's Bree. Welcome back to my channel. I'm back in another video, and I'm here to talk about something that I've seen be talked about everywhere, and something that's honestly been kind of heavy on my heart, as I've also had my own observations about this topic. And so I wanted to come on here and talk about the children. And more specifically, just the state of just how children are nowadays, their ability to learn, and just where they are currently, and some of the struggles that a lot of people have been noticing among the youth. And so I've seen a lot of videos and a lot of tweets pop up in regards to children today, more so stemming from the topic of school, because you see a lot of teachers that are leaving in mass numbers, which I will also make another video about that as well. But just seeing how the overall school system is, and just seeing how a lot of these kids are behaving, it's very, very alarming, and it's raised a lot of red flags. Now, I'm not someone that's usually overly passionate about kids. Like, that's not really me. But I think as I've gotten older, I've grown to open my heart up more, to children. Because I also used to be very, anti-kids. Not that I hated kids. I never hated children. But I just never, really saw myself having children. I've never, babysat anyone. I've been a camp counselor before, but I've never really been around kids like that. And so I'm not someone that's, obsessed over kids. How some people are, they're, obsessed with kids and being around kids and the idea of having kids. That's never really been me, right? But I will say that a lot of the criticisms and a lot of the concern that I've seen circulating online, I definitely share a lot of those same sentiments. Now, the main thing that I've seen going around, right, is that a lot of these kids aren't learning the fundamentals that they need to read, to write, and to comprehend things. I've even had someone tell me directly that a lot of the schools, well, at least in Virginia, it varies between state to state. I know Florida has been in the news a lot for a lot of their changes to their curriculum. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I'm only speaking to, I'm speaking from a very general and broad sense. Again, I've talked to people directly, and I've also watched videos and TikToks of teachers from various different states around the country. I can't name or pinpoint the exact state or the exact school that they teach at, because a lot of them don't reveal that for, privacy reasons for both them and the children that they teach. And so if what I'm saying doesn't apply to your school system, then please just ignore what I'm saying. But I feel like it is becoming a countrywide issue now that kids aren't being taught the things that they need to be taught. And one of those things, I've been told directly, is like phonetics. So how to pronounce words and how to look at a word and know how to pronounce it.
Y'all have probably seen the videos talking about kids can't read nowadays, 7th graders reading at a 4th grade level, kids don't know their ABCs, kids can't read, and I wanted to talk about that. And the thing is, it's not just kids. 20% of adults in the United States are illiterate. Over 50% of adults can't read past an 8th grade level, so it's not just the kids. And there are many factors that play into it, but the factor I'm going to talk about is what happens in schools. The instruction in schools, mainly about sight words and not phonics, is the issue. But anyway, I think schools should move away from doing sight words all the time and go into a more phonics-based curriculum because, again, it's nothing wrong with knowing sight words, but when you talk about sight words and teach about it 80% of the time, that's where it becomes an issue because that's based on memorization. Memorization versus actually decoding, sounding out, and figuring out what a word is, those are two different things. And everybody knows it's better to actually understand what you're doing than to memorize what you're doing because you memorize something, you could easily forget it, especially when it comes to literacy. So that's something that needs to change. We can learn about sight words later, but phonics should be the main priority and at the forefront.
A lot of kids aren't being taught that. A lot of children aren't being taught, again, how to read. Yes, like you learn how to read in school, but I'm sorry, some of that does have to start at home, and some of that should start at home. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from a lot of these teachers and, administrative people that have, talked about how a lot of these kids are struggling, is that they don't have the adequate support at home from their parents. And I think that that's very sad, that there's a lot of parents out there that don't care about their children's education. They don't care if their child is actually learning, is actually making good grades.
The amount of parents that are not involved in their kids' education nowadays is insane, because the amount of kids that go to school, struggle with school, and then when they come back home, they don't have a parent to help them, is not helping the case of education whatsoever. One teacher, basically, it was the same teacher that said that she held parent-teacher conferences and only one parent showed up. And the one parent that showed up did not know that their child did not know their ABCs. And I guess they have to learn it, the uppercase letters and the lowercase letters, and be able to identify them, or at least 80% of it. Child did not know not one thing. And I felt so bad when she was explaining it because the kid does not know. And the parent and the dad, I believe it was the father, he was all like, oh, well, I thought she knew it. But her brother was supposed to teach her. The teacher then goes, her brother's in the 6th grade. He's 11. Like, he is learning himself. Like, this is a job for you as a parent to also step in, because school doesn't just stop at this. Once they leave the building, school also has to continue at home. Like, and it's just sad because it's just like taking 30 minutes to an hour out of your time should not be that much of a hassle. Like, I get it. Parents are working. Parents are doing all this stuff, but I'm so sorry about it. When you signed up as a parent, you knew that you were going to have to help your kids with homework. You knew that you were going to have to help your kids understand school outside of the building. Like, I'm so sorry about it. Not to mention, like, people think that parenting only stops at providing for your kids, whether it's food, shelter, clothing, water, whatever. Like, yeah, those are the basic things that you need to do. But there's other things on top of that. You have to help them with school. Like, come on. Not to mention, a lot of these parents, since they're so absent in their kids' education, they don't know that their kids are struggling with learning disabilities. And had they took the time out of their 40-hour work week, at least 30 minutes to like sit and say, hey, son, I need you to read this to me, to see if like, oh, maybe there is some issue with having dyslexia, or most parents don't want to believe, specifically Black parents, that their kid might have autism or dyscalculia or dyslexia or any type of learning disability out there where they just don't know the information and they need another method of teaching. And if parents were to continue their education with their kids at home, they would catch it. Like, so the excuse that a lot of people say, like, well, parents are always working, so it's tough. Like, I get it. I understand, especially parents that are low income and they have to work 1 to 2 or more jobs. But I'm telling you, there is this time and you can fit it. You can fit it. If you try and apply yourself, you can fit it. Just like how parents tell us, well, if you try and apply yourself in school, you'll get it. So will parents. It all starts from the parents at home, and that's when it becomes easier for them in school. And it won't work if the parents don't want to try.
And it's actually becoming a decent human being in society. And that's something else that I've seen pop up a lot. People saying that, these kids aren't being raised to be empathetic and compassionate and caring. They're being raised to be selfish and to not listen to instruction and to do only what they want to do. They aren't taught that, hey, you're supposed to listen to your teacher and do what your teacher tells you to do. You're supposed to listen to authority. Like, they aren't being taught the fundamental skills that you need to be a functioning human being in society. And it's very, very scary because these kids are going to grow up to be adults one day. And I know I'm a little bit worried about what that's going to look like. A lot of other people are worried about what that's going to look like, because also not only is, raising future adults that, again, don't care about others, don't care about society, don't care about following the rules that have been set in place. Not only is that scary, but also raising future adults that don't have comprehension skills, that their reading level is very low. Like, that's not good. Like, these are what they say, like, children are the future, right? These are going to be the future teachers and the future doctors and the future lawyers.
Okay, so now that TikTok is actually talking about whatever the fuck happened to Gen Alpha, can we talk about what I'm actually scared about? Because, it's all fine and good to have kids who are, little rats, right? Like, whatever. It doesn't really bother me that much that Gen Alpha can't read and doesn't have any social skills and doesn't have any conflict, resolving skills. That's fine, whatever. What scares me is that one day these kids will grow up and be 70, 60, 50, right? 30. And once they're in that age, once they're in their age of political power, just as for us Gen Zs, millennials, and the generation below us, a majority of the political power is held by Gen X and boomers right now, right? So just as a majority of the political power is held by Gen X and boomers right now over us, assuming that we don't fix the whole generational tyranny thing, one day, Gen Alpha kids will be the next boomers politically, if you don't fix your shit right now. So please, not for our sake, but for our kids' sake and their kids' sake, and literally the posterity of humanity's sake, do better with your kids.
And it's crazy because I'm also hearing too that a lot of kids don't want to go to college. Now, I'm indifferent about college, right? I'm not somebody that's going to heavily push college onto anybody, because as someone that did go to college and did get my degree, I don't feel that college is for everybody. And I also don't feel like the value of a degree is the same as it used to be. And so if you choose not to go to college, I'm not someone that is going to shame anybody for that. Even people who don't finish college, don't blame you. Don't blame you at all. Like I said, the value of a degree is just not there. And also, again, college just is not for everybody. I think that people thrive in different environments and in different fields. And for some people, going to a trade school is the best thing for them. Everybody isn't meant to go to a university or go to, a community college. It's not for everybody. And I don't believe that it should be pushed on everybody. I think people should find what they're passionate about, what they're good at, and what they're capable at, and they should pursue that 110%. I don't think that everybody should go to college. I don't believe that, even as someone that did go to college. Now, I think there's a lot of value in college in terms of the experience that you get and the connections that you can make. Absolutely. A lot of the connections and people that you meet and even the experience that you have in college, that can take you throughout your entire life. A lot of that stuff is priceless, and I agree with that. But, again, to each their own, right? But even to see how a lot of kids aren't aspiring really to do anything.
They're not going to hire you. They're not going to hire you because you can't listen to anybody. Well, when she sees that you are not capable of doing any work, she's going to fire you. Yes, you
Well,
will.
look at McDonald's. They
Because
hire
you're going to be a
anyone.
detriment to that workplace.
They'll hire anyone. You can always just go work at McDonald's.
No, you want to bet? McDonald's doesn't just hire anybody.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
They hire anyone.
McDonald's has standards that you have to meet. If you can't even make it through 6th grade, they're not going to hire you at McDonald's.
I could kind of get with, you know, if there was like an increase in people wanting to do trade school or wanting to do community college, like great. But from what I'm hearing is that a lot of kids don't even want to be educated in anything. Like they don't want to get a certificate in nothing. They don't want to go to any type of schooling after, you know, their initial schooling. And that's also very alarming because again, it's like, you know, we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need and other type of occupations as well. Like we need plumbers. Like we need everybody. Like every job and every occupation is equally important in my opinion. And, you know, although again, I don't think everyone necessarily needs to go to college, I do think everyone and every kid should have some type of goal or aspiration that they want to pursue, right? And I am hearing too that there's been an increase of children wanting to be social media influencers because that is becoming a more popular route.
It is in no way a secret that the creator influencer economy has absolutely boomed over the past several years, but here's the question. How many of you can actually make it as an influencer? Which I know it sounds like I'm about to sell you on a course. For just $99 a month, you can join the Franco Alpha Man Squad. I'll give you daily tips on how to invest, make content, and how women aren't actually people. I'm kidding. About the course, not about can you be an influencer. Because actually, according to the data, a lot of us actually think we can. Right? I mean, in 2019, a global survey found that nearly 30% of kids aged 8 to 12 listed YouTuber as their top career choice. That is 3 times more than picked the classic astronaut. In that same year, a survey of Gen Z and millennials in the US found that more than half of 13 to 38-year-olds wanted to become social media influencers. And you'd be crazy to think that those numbers haven't gone even higher since then. And so now, to meet this demand, there's actually a growing cottage industry of summer camps and out-of-school programs that teach kids how to find fame in the digital age. With that, you have places like the Washington Post taking a closer look at one of those known as Creator Camp, a summer program for kids 6 to 13, where for $230 a week, you could send your kid there for 3 days out of the week, during which they make videos with props, green screens, costumes, lighting equipment, and other tools.
Nowadays, a lot of, you know, well, I won't even say a lot because it's not a lot. I know it feels like a lot sometimes, but everybody is not out here making millions of dollars being an influencer. That's like a very select few people. But I feel like it has such a big impact online that a lot of people are aspiring to be that. And even with me, right, like even when I grew up watching YouTubers and things like that, I still always had in the back of my mind that I needed to have an actual career, that I actually needed to, like, you know, pursue something more like stable, I guess, and that, you know, oh, YouTube could be something that I do as a hobby, or if I am lucky enough to where it, you know, gets big and I could do it full time, you know, I'll do it full time. You know, I've talked about how I've always had dreams of working for myself, and that working for other people was always just going to be a temporary thing to, you know, pay bills and be able to provide for myself. And so, but yeah, like even with that, I never went into it like, oh, like I'm gonna just be an influencer and that's it. But a lot of kids are, and a lot of kids are also seeing too people spend, you know, an egregious amount of money to get a degree and to get an education, and you know, they aren't really seeing people be successful at that. I mean, yes, some people have been able to go the traditional route of, oh, just go to college, get a good job, and you'll be fine. But you're seeing a lot of times, especially nowadays, like that's just not the reality. And I think a lot of kids are looking at it like, y'all are spending all this money going to college to struggle to get a degree and still can't get a job or still can't get a good paying job. Why am I gonna sit here and spend $50K on a college degree to only make about $50K when I can make $1 billion like Mr. Beast? And obviously that is like unrealistic to think that just anybody can become Mr. Beast or anybody can just pick up a camera, start a YouTube channel, or do TikToks and they're just gonna, you know, blow up like a Charli D'Amelio or whatever. But that's what a lot of kids are seeing. That's what they're being fed online. And so of course it makes sense that they would want to aspire to that. But with that being said though, I think we still have to be, you know, realistic and, you know, have plan Bs and, you know, the fact that there is such a huge decrease in children wanting to go into traditional roles, I think it is a bit alarming. And I also spoke briefly earlier about how a lot of kids are just struggling to learn. A lot of them are behind and they're still being pushed to the next grade. You know, I talked about that with the teacher that had went viral on TikTok, because he was saying how his 7th graders are reading at a 4th grade level, and the school district is still wanting to push them along no matter what. And it's like, that is very, very alarming. And it's funny because I have a friend too who, this is her first year teaching, and she talked about how she tried to get her kids to sit down and read a book. Like, you know how like back in the day, you would do like the popcorn reading where you have one person read a paragraph, then they'll pick somebody to read another paragraph. She literally could not get them to do it. And so she literally had to pull up the book on YouTube, being read in a video format, and then all the kids were glued to it. Like, that's the other thing too, is like a lot of kids nowadays, they can't even pick up a book. Like, they can't even sit down, pick up a book and read it. They have to have some type of like visual element for them to pay attention. And it's funny because I saw this TikTok the other day about someone was like, listen, like Gen Z, like when we raise our kids, can we promise not to raise iPad kids?
I need everybody else in my generation to promise that we are not going to raise iPad children. Please. I just saw a TikTok from some millennial, and she was like, here's a message to Gen Z. You might make fun of us, but watch out. We're raising the next generation, and they're going to eat you up. Your kids can't read, okay? You're raising Gen Alpha. They're bizarre and terribly behaved. Y'all bred iPad children. You have been shoving media and screens in these kids' faces since birth. They probably have no imagination because their brain hasn't actually been forced to come up with any original thought. Gen Z, please, when we are older, don't give your kids iPads at the dinner table.
Because no, literally, like I'm even starting to see how that's having a negative impact, because it's like a lot of kids can't function without a screen in front of their faces, and a lot of them are being given iPads and cell phones, iPhones at that, at a very early age, and they're being hooked to it very, very early. I feel like I was born at like the perfect middle spot. I was born in that era where technology was kind of like just starting to pick up, and so I still got to experience life without technology and life when technology was just about to take off. And so like I didn't get my first cell phone until like middle school, and in middle school I didn't have like a fancy touchscreen phone. I had them little slide up phones. I had the phone where you had to like click, like how if you were trying to send a text, you would have to, so let's say you needed to send a text, right? And you needed to get to the letter C. You had to press 1 3 times to get to the letter C. Like, I had those type of phones. I had a typewriter. I had a camera where you had to take the picture and then get it developed at Walgreens. Like, I had a lot of those experiences. But then I also had the flip side where, I was on Instagram when it first came out. I was on Facebook. I kind of missed the MySpace era, but like I had a good mix between the two. And although I did have my fair share of, screens, like I had my Nintendo DS, I had my Game Boy Advanced, there still was a balance. Like, yes, I played my video games here and there, but then I also had my Barbie dolls. Like, I had a good mix, and my mom was very good at making sure I didn't get too consumed in it. Now, I will admit, once I got to like high school, I was definitely like deep in technology at that point. Like, I was staring at a computer screen like 24/7 at that point. But that's just kind of, again, that's just how things kind of evolve. Like, you get to high school and now we have tablets to do our homework. Now our textbooks are on these tablets. And so with all that being said, right, I think there's a balance, right? There's a balance to everything. And I don't think a lot of these kids they don't have balance when it comes to technology. A lot of parents, they are kind of just giving their kid an iPad or a phone to be on all day, and they're not actually making sure that they still go outside and touch grass, that they still get involved in other things. Like the idea of putting phones down at the dinner table. That's like a foreign concept now. Like, and I think we need to get back to that a little bit. And to each their own, you know, parent how you want to parent. But I do think there is a lack of parenting, if I'm honest. I think there's a lack of parenting. Again, I'm just going off of what I've heard from other teachers and other administrators, that even when it comes to disciplining your child, a lot of parents aren't doing that anymore. They're not disciplining their kid. They're allowing their kid to do whatever they want to do, talk to them and talk to other people however they want.
Oh, and you finna give me my shit. Don't touch me.
So in this video, the student swings first, and the student and the teacher both get charged. For one, I don't think the teacher should get charged. Today, the lack of discipline that I see is absolutely astounding. And kids take advantage of that because they know there's no real repercussions for their actions. They're not stupid. So as a result of us laxing our discipline, the kids are starting to get worse and worse and worse. She should never have been behind the desk challenging the teacher like that to begin with. And the student probably should have got more than what she did. There's a blatant lack of respect for teachers. And then that leads to less people wanting to go into that profession, which then means less demand, which then means lower pay, which then means lower quality of people that become teachers, which in turn is not the best for our children. Remember, these children are gonna end up being in power in this country at some point. So the punishment needs to start becoming more harsh, because obviously what it is right now is not working. And kids need to actually fear their parents again in order to behave.
And even when teachers express like, hey, your kid is acting up, you know, the parent is getting mad at the teacher. The parents are, you know, telling the teacher like, you know, don't tell my child what to do. And it's just like, what do you mean? What do you mean? They're the teacher. They're supposed to be telling your child what to do. Now, yes, obviously the teacher can't abuse and talk to your child crazy, but to say that the teacher doesn't have the authority to tell your child what to do, what? They're the teacher. They're teaching your child while you're not, you know, physically present. Like, they're a big part of their development and their growth as a person as well. And so if you're just allowing a child to mistreat people with no repercussions, how do you think they're gonna do in society? Like, you literally see nowadays too, like, you know, kids getting into physical fights all the time with teachers and nothing being done about it.
You're not gonna talk to me like that. Bitch, you're not gonna talk to me like that. You're not gonna talk to me like that. You dead playing my face right now. You need to give her a punch.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my God.
Put your hands on me. Yeah, I swear to God, if you don't get your hands, put your hands on me. Give me hands on me. Don't get so swinging back. Deal with me.
You're right. Because you touched me. I did not touch you. So I asked you.
No, I'm calling my mama. You ain't about to fuck me up, bitch. And now your sister's about to get fucked up and she doesn't get the fuck away from me. You want to talk to her because she's black and she's fucking pissing me off right
The parents not even stepping in and doing anything about it. Sometimes they'll jump in with their kid and jump the teacher. Like, it's just so crazy nowadays. And it's just crazy because, again, like for me, and this is why I hate being, well, honestly, I think now they're starting to separate the generations, because for so long they would try to put my generation, Gen Z, with a lot of these middle schoolers and elementary schoolers, and I did not like that. So now they're referring to them as Gen Alpha, which I can get with, right? But for Gen Z, for the latter end of Gen Z, for a lot of us, right, having your teacher or having your principal call your parent was literally like the scariest thing on the planet. Like, I remember when folks used to be scared to bring their report cards home because they were worried about, you know, their parents getting upset with them and, you know, making them do extra work at home. But it's because the parents cared. They cared about their child's education. They cared about how their child represented them in public. And so if you were acting a fool or not doing what you were supposed to be doing, your parent would be on your behind about that. And again, obviously it's, you know, it varies, right? I mean, you had some parents that, you know, don't care and don't discipline. But I know for the most part, I know a lot of people that I went to school with, regardless of like even where you were academically, a lot of us had parents that, you know, like, you did not want your teacher to call your mom or your dad because you knew you were going to get it when you get home. And I feel like, you know, no kid shouldn't be terrified of their parents, but they should be a little. Here's what I think. I think kids should care about how they show up in the world. I think they should care about the impact and the representation about they have, you know, in school. And again, a lot of times kids are reflective of their parents. And again, back then, parents cared about how their kids represented them in public. And I feel like nowadays parents don't care. They don't care if their kid is acting a fool. Like, they literally just do not care. And I don't get why. I don't understand why. It's just really, really sad. And there's another element to this, right, that I do want to address. And I've seen a few people bring it up, and I don't want to brush it off entirely. And, you know, going back to the whole point of a lot of parents, they aren't sitting down with their children to make sure that their homework is done or making sure that they read if they are struggling. Someone did bring up a very valid point that the way that society is set up nowadays, it doesn't really allow for a lot of that. And what they were speaking to, right, is right now we are in hard times. Society wise, financially, the economy is in shambles right now. The job market is in shambles right now. And so back then you could kind of get away with there being one parent that works full time and can provide for the whole household. A lot of times you saw, more of the traditional approach where you would have, if you come from a two-parent household, which that's another element as well. In two-parent households, you have the father who goes and works all day. And then you have the mother who, may stay at home and she has time to dedicate to making sure that her child's education is being taken care of and they're on top of their homework and things like that. But nowadays, with the way the economy is set up, that no longer works for most middle class households. Now you have it to where both parents are having to work full time to make ends meet, which doesn't allow a lot of time for their kids.
Here's another thing that's going on today. People think they can have a kid and then have careers too, but everyone's has a career. The mom has a career, the dad has a career, everybody has a career. And when are you watching the kid? Who's paying attention to the kid?
In 1950, 4 out of 10 children had dual working parents. Today's number is 9 out of 10. The difference being in 1950, we had this very rigorous kind of system in place that dad was going to work, mom was staying home, dad was making a paycheck, mom was running the household. In 40% of households today, mom is actually making more money than dad. In almost all households, she's doing more work at home than dad. So there's a tremendous amount of friction and frustration at home around just the actual labor and planning of the house, right? It's so tacky and so cheesy, but it's so true that if you ask most dads, who's your kid's teacher, like they don't know the name. Who's planning the vacations? Who's buying the groceries? Who's folding the clothes? You start going down this laundry list of things, and almost always the answer returns back to my wife or mom. But she's also doing a 9-to-5 job.
How are we supposed to balance everything? I am drowning. I wake up in the morning, I pack my kids' lunches, I drive them to school, I have to rush back so I can make it to my first meeting. My boss tells me that I'm not engaged enough on Zoom, so I have to try harder there. I spend all day doing my job where I don't even leave my desk chair. My house is falling apart. I don't even have time to take my dogs outside during the day, and somehow I'm also supposed to be working out, cooking dinner at night, eating right, helping them with homework. I spend my lunch break picking them up from school, and I don't even get 5 minutes to myself during the day, and it's not even enough. Like, I'm not doing anything 100%. When is it just enough?
It's like they work from 9 to 5 or whatever, sometimes longer than that, and they get home and all they're concerned about is making sure that everybody eats and make sure that everybody sleeps and has what they need. They barely even have time for themselves to be able to breathe and relax, let alone time to also make sure that their kids' homework is being taken care of and whatever the case may be. So there's an argument to be made that with the way the society is currently, that it doesn't even allow for parents to invest in their child's education or just in their child, period, because they're having to make sure that food is being put on the table, and that's all they have the capacity to care about. And I think that is a larger issue that needs to be talked about as well. And even back to my point about the whole single parent thing, I mean, that too, a lot of people are now coming from single parent households, and as a single parent, again, you don't have a lot of time to dedicate to other things. Like, even when people talk about, you know, how kids don't really participate in extracurricular activities, partly because a lot of schools are taking away extracurricular activities, but also too, a lot of extracurricular activities, whether it's chess club or whether it's soccer, it costs money and it costs time. And a lot of working middle class people, they just don't have the money and the resources and the time to invest in that either, to invest in their child being able to have an outlet, you know? And, you know, that's why I'm not in a rush to have kids at all, because I want to be able to provide all of that to my child. I want to be able to be there fully for them, and I want them to be able to participate in whatever they want to do, whether it's ballet, soccer, baseball, whatever they want to do. I want to make sure that I can show up for them in that way. But unfortunately, a lot of households out there, they just can't. And so yeah, I think that, you know, a lot of kids right now are struggling, and it's reflective of so many different things, you know, again, society, the economy, the school system, not even to mention that a lot of kids just something that I've noticed, and I've noticed this for a while, and I spoke about this in a previous video that barely anybody watched. But, you know, it was in regards to kids not having kid-friendly outlets either. Now, again, with the whole YouTuber, streamer, influencer culture, it's a little bit tricky because, again, I don't believe that every single influencer is obligated to make kid-friendly content. I mean, even on this channel, right? Like, I don't talk about anything very, like, vulgar or inappropriate. But also, I wouldn't say that my content is geared towards children. I'm talking about, you know, the job market and things like that. Like, my content isn't geared towards children. Not everybody's content is geared towards children. And so again, I think it's on the parents to pay attention to what their kids are watching and discern you know, what they should be watching, and put forth the proper parental controls and whatnot, and making sure that, you know, they have control over what their kid consumes as far as entertainment is concerned. But one thing that I've realized too is that a lot of kids don't have kid-friendly outlets. Like, yes, you still have Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, but I'm gonna be honest, those shows are not hitting the same no more. And I don't know, maybe for the kids of today, it's hitting for them. But I don't know. I just feel like a lot of like Disney shows and a lot of Nickelodeon shows, like, they just don't hit the same no more. But a lot of people aren't watching TV anymore. You have to also keep that in mind. A lot of kids aren't watching TV. That's why you have like a Disney Plus and a Paramount Plus that has Nickelodeon stuff on there. That's what people are watching. People are streaming and they're watching, you know, YouTube videos and TikToks. They aren't really sitting down and watching TV shows, which was a really big part of my childhood. Like, you know, 8 o'clock at night, new episodes of That's So Raven or Hannah Montana or whatever I was watching at that time. Like, that was like a big staple of my childhood. Like, let me get home, hurry up and do my homework, so by 7 or 8 o'clock I can watch, you know, a new episode of my favorite show. You don't really see that nowadays. And you also don't see kids having like kid-friendly music to listen to. And again, I don't think you can blame the artists themselves for that, because again, I don't want everything to be kid friendly. And that's the other thing too I wanted to address, and people complaining about certain influencers or certain content creators like Kai Cenat and saying like, oh, like they aren't making kid friendly content. Why do y'all want everything and everybody to be kid friendly? Like, I don't want that. Again, I stopped watching Disney Channel a long time ago. Okay, I want grown folks content. Okay, I don't want everything to be child friendly. I don't get why people complain about that, about certain creators or certain influencers not being kid friendly. Everything is not meant to be kid friendly, and there are kid friendly creators out there. You just have to find them and steer your child in that direction. But I don't want everything. That's why I feel like YouTube is so watered down now, and you can barely even say certain things or say certain words. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in some of my like titles, I have to start like kind of manipulating the words a little bit, because there's certain words that get flagged that in my opinion shouldn't really be flagged, but it's because like everything's just so like, you know, sensitive nowadays, and people again are quick to be like, oh, this is not child friendly. And it's like, okay, everything is not meant to be child friendly. Like, however, with that being said though, I will say there is a decrease. I will admit that there is a decrease of child-friendly content that is out there and that's available. Again, like if I decide to have a child one day, they're going to be watching a lot of the shows that I watched, okay? I'm going to pull out the old VHS tapes. I'm going to pull out all the old stuff, and I'm going to get them hooked to what I grew up watching, because yeah, like there just isn't a lot of stuff. And I'm even thinking back to, again, when I was in middle school, and the type of things that I was into and the type of content that I would consume, it was very much age appropriate things. Like, again, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, Teen Nick, even like clothing stores, right? Like I would shop at the Children's Place and Justice, and you know, everyone had like a little like Aeropostale and Hollister era. You don't really see that anymore. You now see high schoolers in Fashion Nova and Pretty Little Thing. It's just like, where's like the kid-friendly clothes and the style? Like, no one's having like an awkward face. It's like everybody is expected to show up first day of school with bundles and Gucci.
Baby, I'm so glad I graduated back then, because these kids would have shut me down. My Aeropostale shirt, Hollister pants, when the stood of cheese. These kids coming Balili and Gucci to your para designer.
Alright, y'all, we finna do fit check. I put on 10. Come on, Mimi.
Skirt from Bowie, shoes from Nike. I don't know what the fuck you call it. That's from Clyde. This from Lucy Wayne. Necklace from Belts. Yeah, both
Period. Yeah.
Look at our shoes, Balenciaga, skirt, Zala, shirt, dope skill, purse, I forgot.
Go. Yeah, period.
I got my shoes from Retro. My shirt custom made.
Now, I will say that, you know, like we had a little bit of that, like with sneakers, like, you know, everyone wanted like the coolest sneakers or whatever, but that was about it. Like, we were not, like the standards, the unrealistic standards that a lot of these kids like set themselves to is just, it's so, I couldn't imagine. Like, I just could not imagine that amount of pressure to look perfect. And even back then, like I had a little bit of that, but again, it wasn't much. Like, yeah, people would wear makeup. Yes, like, you know, you had some girls who would come to school with like weave or whatever, or braids. Like, that was like the biggest thing too, was like having a protective style and like having like braids or whatever. But to show up in Gucci and Louis Vuitton and, you know, like just on the first day of school. Like, I could not imagine. And I'm so glad I'm not in high school right now, because that's a lot of freaking pressure. And then, yeah, even like with music, like, and no, Kids Bop is not the only like kid friendly music that we had back then. Like, again, back in the day, now don't get me wrong, I still listen to, you know, like Nicki Minaj and Lil Wayne when I was like in middle school, but majority of the songs and stuff that I would listen to honestly was from like Disney Channel and Nickelodeon. And I don't even know if they're doing that to like a large scale in terms of like, you know, having a lot of their actors and actresses like pursue music. Cause yeah, that was again like my whole childhood, listening to Hannah Montana, listening to, oh my god, who else? Vanessa Hudgens from High School Musical, Bridget Mendler, oh my god, who else? Big Time Rush. I still listen to Big Time Rush to this day. Who else? The Jonas Brothers, Lemonade Mouth, High School Musical. Like, you know, they put out music from the movies, the Cheetah Girls. Like, you had so much music out there that not only was good, but was child friendly and age appropriate. You don't have that today. Like, I think the last batch of kid friendly music that I can think of is maybe Descendants and Teen Beach Movie. Outside of that, what are the kids listening to? I'll tell you what they're listening to. Sexy Red.
If you see me and you tryna see what's up. It's sexy. Yeah. Bad bitches, we like fast cars. We like niggas that sell drugs with fast cars. Okay.
It's trying to see me, and trying to see me, and trying to say what's up. Go. Downtown, going downtown.
Ooh. How do these kids know the lyrics to this?
They're listening to, you know, a lot of these rappers that don't rap about things that kids should be listening to. Now, again, I'm not gonna act as if I was holier than thou. I was listening to Nicki Minaj. I was listening to Lil Wayne. I was listening to Drake, Jay-Z, Kanye. I was listening to them back then. I was. But I also had my healthy mix of age-appropriate music. Not to mention, too, that if I'm gonna be real, a lot of the rappers that I listened to growing up, I listened to on the low. Like, my mom didn't know I was listening to that. My mom made it very clear that I would not listen to Nicki Minaj. She found Nicki Minaj very inappropriate. Like, because also back then, too, like, you would have to buy music on iTunes. Like, there wasn't, like, streaming yet. And so, you know, my iPod... See, I'm aging myself. My iPod that I had at the time, it was connected to my mom's like iTunes account, and so whenever I would purchase music, she would get an email about it, and so I had to be real careful about listening to music. And that's actually what led me into downloading music illegally, because I really wanted to listen to Nicki Minaj, like, so bad. And so I would just, like, download it from this site that probably had a virus on it just so I could listen to Nicki Minaj. And so, yeah, even with that, too, it's like, yeah, I listen to Nicki Minaj and all that, but my mom still had her rules about what I could listen to, right? Because she knew that a lot of that stuff just wasn't appropriate, and she didn't want me to be influenced by it. And although I was a pretty good, like, I was a pretty good kid in general, but I was also pretty good at not being easily impressed by things that I would consume. Like, I was very good at separating entertainment from, you know, whatever I was listening to at the time. But I also understand a lot of kids are impressionable. So that's why, again, I say, if you know that your child is easily impressionable, you have to stay on top of the things that they're listening to. And I'm not gonna lie, hearing 5-year-olds rap to Sexy Red, of all people, like, it's alarming. I'm not gonna lie. Like, they can listen to other stuff. Like, it isn't no shade or no hate to Sexy Red at all, like, as an artist. Like, I think she is for the grown folks. I think she's for the grown people. But for 5-year-olds and people in elementary school, they should not be listening to Sexy Red, and they should not be knowing her lyrics. word for word. Her lyrics are extremely inappropriate, and I don't think that kids should be listening to that. They need the Hannah Montanas. They need the Big Time Rushes. They need kid-friendly music. That's what they need to be listening to. And yes, I understand that as an adult, you don't always want to listen to kid-friendly music, but that's kind of the price you pay. Sorry. Listen, when you're dropping your kids off to school, play some Moana, play some Frozen, and then once they get out the car, then you blast Sexy Red. But playing that in front of them and having them be influenced by that type of music, I do think is very alarming. But yeah, like, I just miss that. I miss, like, you know, seeing the awkward era, the you know, the silly bands, the duct tape era. I do miss seeing that. I hate that we can't even see the kids of today go through some of that stuff that we went through because it's just not there.
90s babies are really the last generation to have an actual childhood. Y'all think like my take, like I was coming at Sexy Red and Sukihana now. I'm not mad at them. Like, I just don't think they for kids. I feel like this generation and the generation that comes thereafter, like, they don't have an opportunity to be real children. What happened to being a preteen? Like, we even had stores that was dedicated to being a preteen. And I remember, like, what was it called, like Justice or something, but it was dedicated to children or preteens specifically. And then y'all act like y'all were not influenced by music, and I just do not buy that. Like, I'm gonna be the first person to say I was very much so influenced by music, especially because I was homeschooled. So I used to literally try to figure out what was like in style from listening to music and like looking at magazines. I wore my first pair of skin tight jeans. I mean, the skinniest, tightest jeans I could find because Bow Wow said in the song, couldn't believe what I seen when she squeezed them jeans. I was 12 and like 50 pounds. So when I talk about people being influenced by music, I'm not talking about your overgrown ass. I'm not talking about you with the fully developed frontal lobe that's not doing you no justice. I'm talking about the children who are easily impressionable and they don't have anyone to look up to. That is a problem. They don't have the Disney Channel. They don't have Nickelodeon. They have YouTube and the music that's playing on the radio. That's the same stuff we listen to. We have the wherewithal to be like, yeah, I'm not going to go live my life like that. But children are literally looking up to these people. And it is a problem when they go into high schools to perform. That is a problem. So y'all don't have to agree with me, but y'all have to agree with the fact that there is no such thing as a preteen anymore.
Like, even thinking back to like kid-friendly magazines, right? Like J14 was like my go-to magazine that I used to look at. Like, a lot of that stuff is just, it's gone. Like, if you mention that to a kid today, like, they would have no idea what you're talking about. And I think that that's really sad, to be honest. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. I do worry. I worry a lot. I worry about the youth. I worry about society. I worry about how these kids are going to grow up and the impact that they're going to have. Because if they're not learning how to read, if they're not learning how to pronounce words correctly, if they're lacking comprehension skills, and if they're being exposed to things, really early and they're being robbed of their youth, I can only imagine the impact that's going to have in the future. And again, only time will tell. But it's frightening. It's frightening because, again, these are going to be our doctors and lawyers and politicians one day. And so, and I don't know why so many school systems are like, it seems like a lot of them are just going backwards. Like, they don't care. Like, I think that's the other thing too. It's like a lot of the higher ups in education, they don't seem to care about kids like that. Like, they're taking away programs, they're taking away parts of the curriculum that I think is important. Like, I don't even think people are being taught how to write in cursive anymore. Like, it's really sad to see, and I just wonder what the agenda is behind that. Like, what's the agenda behind decreasing the amount of education available to children and, denying them access to certain outlets? Because like I said, like, a lot of the after school programs that, were really big back in the day, like, a lot of schools are cutting that. And it's like, is it because of budget or is it because of something else? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know, man. Time will tell in regards to how the kids of today affects society in general in the future, and if we're going to see a lot of these negative impacts affect society in a way that's detrimental overall. But yeah, that's all I gotta say for this topic. As always, let me know your guys' overall thoughts in the comments down below. If you work in education and you echoed a lot of the statements that I've said in this video, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys go ahead, give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video.